Off the Wall Productions is proud to present Voices of the Methow. This is a series of conversations with interesting folk in and around the valley. These are some stories I've put together from a talk Arnold Cleveland gave at the Twisp Interpretive Center on April 29, 2018. Arnold is a full-blood Wenatchi band descendant and member of the Colville Confederated Tribes.
I kind of decided about that time to try a different career, so I had two uncles that went through World War II and came home, and one uncle that got in towards the end of Korea, didn't have to go over. My older brother went through Korea, and he went through frozen chosen and had his hands, of course, frozen, his feet froze. He was in construction work, but anyway, when he got home, they took care of him, but they took a lot of skin and stuff off of his midsection, to do his hands and a little bit of his face and his feet. And he'd always laugh. He says, I can always tell when I'm getting too much weight on because my hands start puffing up. So that was always a big joke with him. But we the military thing, and I remember World War II. We were in the pear industry down in Lake County, working in there, and when they dropped the bombs, and the labor camp we're in, there must have been 300 families in there. It was just one big, huge camp and they all, in Lake County at that time, there was at least 12 packing houses around the whole county. There were that many pear trees around. But at that labor camp where we all stayed, the whole country had just shut down. And everybody had a radio, turned the radios on, and this commentator was going along about, I guess he was with the airplanes, I don't know where he was at, but he knew everything was going on. And you could hear the planes coming over you. Then they're getting to Japan, and then they dropped and you actually heard the bombs go off. And it's like one 3-day celebration. They just, everybody went bonkers, and there was a lot of alcohol sold that weekend, I know that. But everybody was happy because that pretty much ended World War II. I don't know that I was dreaming about that kind of stuff, but I decided to leave home, and I went and joined the Marine Corps. And that was an awakening. I did well, and I progressed rather quickly and smoothly because I liked that discipline. I liked the way things went up to a point. We kind of got like the church school up here. Politically, we didn't connect really close towards the end. I spent 6.5 years with them. We did the initial helicopter. Vietnam was just getting started. But in some respects, it had been going along because my older brother, when he come back from Korea and home, they shipped him to Vietnam. He spent, I think, at that time, their tours were 15 months. And this was in, what was that, 51, 52, somewhere in there. And they already had troops in Vietnam, and they were called advisors. And that's what was part of his program, because he was a squared away Marine. He was a drill instructor and troop handler, and you had to be pretty sharp to be one of those guys, and he was 6'3", a real Marine when you see the posters, and stuff. But that's what they did, and that was going on long before it actually broke loose. So I didn't get to see any of that action with the 6.5 years I was in. Somewhere along the way, I'd gotten tuberculosis, and then that turned into pneumonia, and this left lung got filled up, and they had to take part of it out and all that. So I spent a lot of time on a medical kind of a program. Towards the end there, after I got back on full duty and all that, we started getting a lot of colored folks in the service. I think some years later we kind of figured out it was part of the government's way of eliminating them, because even at that point, this was in 1960, 61, 62. I got out 1st February in 63. And when I got out, I was in a base company. I was stuck right on Camp Pendleton. And we were in base motor transport. We had an exceptionally big company because of all the vehicles and stuff that we had. But when I got out, 90% of our whole company was colored guys. The ones we were getting were these guys from New York and Chicago and these places, and every one of them was on a either go to prison or join the service. I was an E4 leader, acting platoon leader, but we got all these stats, you know, you're constantly getting stats and discussing personnel and problems and issues and what we're going to face when we go over and stuff. At that time, even every company that went over, they figured at least 60% of them were not coming back home. And that was in 1963, and that was just, 5 years before it really exploded. And so these guys were going out, and they're, you know, like I say, 90% of them were colored guys. And I think that was, looking back, I think that was a big part of the governmental scheme to work. Anyway, again, politically, like that stuff there, and it's like, I can't be a part of this. It's not, you know, this is not what I'm here for. So I got out, and I lucked out when I got out because, well, even while I was in there, you know, earlier on we was talking about me, I was learning how to pick these locks. Well, up at the mission, they had, in the gym, they had one door there, room there. It's where they kept all the, you know, pogey bait, all the candy. And so sometimes when some of the guys did good things, Father'd come in there and he'd let you go in and get a candy bar out, and, you know, whoever did really good, get a candy bar. Well, of course, I never did get one of those, but I figured out, you know, I can get candy bars anytime I want. So then I was making money too, because I'd charge these guys 50 cents for candy bars. So anyway, this progressed on, and somewhere along the way, I learned to pick safes, smaller safes. Couldn't do the big ones, but I got to be pretty good. Well, in the service then, what did they do? They needed somebody to break into some of the security things and stuff. Man, that's where I come in. So I got some privileges that way, you know. So in the end, it kind of balanced out, you know. And then that was pretty cool. So some of that training, you know, came in handy years later. In fact, I was heading home in '63. I had the opportunity to be a Greyhound bus driver. At that time, Greyhound wouldn't take anybody under 26 years old, and I was only not quite 24 yet. So anyway, this Captain Mary was his name. Anyway, he pulled his strings, whatever it was. Next thing I got a call, Arnold, 1st of April, go to Los Angeles and check into the school. So I did. And the first day I went, we checked in. There were 385 applicants for that class. They set them up in classes, you know. There was 385. We started that first day, checked in. And this was at their Greyhound yard in LA. The second day, there was about 300. The third day, they cut it down. Anyway, that whole week, and by the time we started the next class on the second week, there was 35 of us. And they run you through these rooms, and they got hearing this and taking all these psych tests, I guess they were, and questions, and that's all it was kind of odd. It was just all classroom stuff. And out of them 380 or 85, we started class, I think, with 35 or 38 of us on the next Monday. So then that first 3 days, all that was mapping. We did maps, because the Greyhound bus had to go down this certain road, and writing all these things down. He'd say, okay, you pull out of the yard, you turn left. That was okay, turn left. You go down 3 blocks, right by that big building, cross on the 1 o'clock side is the big blue building. Just before that, you turn right. Turn right at the big blue building on the corner down. And that's how they went. You know, it was just all these landmarks. This one's a big tree here, and this one here's a coffee shop or something over there. And that's how you made your routes all around out of LA and these different towns. So after we took all those notes, then the next 3rd week was like, okay, now we'll go on these road trips. So we'd take off in the morning and we'd go to some town, spend the night, and come back. And that's all we did for the next 2 weeks. Well, the last week, the last couple days there, I was the 13th guy left on there. Because as we did these driving things, if you didn't make it, then, I mean, you were just gone, you know. So I was number 13. We had an overnight trip to Phoenix and back, and we were just getting ready to get on the bus, and that's when they tell you, because as soon as you hear your name over the speaker, it's like, see ya, you know. And I was feeling pretty good about that. I thought, man, you know, overnight trip, and I'm a Greyhound bus driver. Same thing, I was getting ready to get on the bus. Arnold Cleveland, go to check into the office. And I was gone. Well, what happened was, because I'd had tuberculosis, and they removed part of my lung and all that stuff, the head office or the West Coast was in San Francisco, and they said, well, because I had to go meet with some of them, they said, well, Arnold, if you come up with a 10-year paid-up health policy covering your total health, so anything like this should, you know, pop up later, they didn't want to be responsible. I said, I don't have $50,000 to spend on something like that. So anyway, I said, adios, and I left. So I got, on the way home, I stopped at Winters. My dad was working there running, he was kind of a plant supervisor by then. So I pulled in there and, you know, talked with him, and he said, well, where you headed? And I told him, I'm headed home. He says, you got enough money? And I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, you want to work a few days and you know, make sure you got enough money to get home. Okay. So I went to work for him. And then for the next 35 years, but we ended up being my maintenance background, you know, taking care of all this processing equipment and learning how to run sheds and stuff. And eventually I became a plant supervisor, different ones. And then we started building, my dad and I started building equipment for some of the different packing sheds. And sometimes we'd come up here and the early Apple manufacturing, equipment manufacturing was I just had his name and lost him down here in Van Dorn. Yeah, we got acquainted with the old man then, and so we would kick around plans and stuff, you know, and thoughts and ideas, and he helped us out a lot getting started. But we did that. We built equipment, and then we installed it, and then ran it, and all that, you know, over the years. And eventually we contracted to some of the packing houses in Lake County, the pear sheds, because we just would contract with the co-op or the individual grower and say, okay, we'll do all the hiring, we'll run the shed, we'll receive your fruit, we'll process it, package it, put it in cold storage, and it's yours. And that was very lucrative. We did well in that. Worked through that, and then my dad retired, and actually he ended up moving right up there where I'm living now, the big city of Mons. And don't laugh, we got a market there now, you know. Everybody familiar with Mons, Washington? Yeah, he's got the market going, and now he's building something across the street. But that's set really quiet for quite a few years. In fact, some years ago it was on the market for $1 million. But yeah, the whole city of Mons.
You've been listening to Voices of the Methow, an off-the-wall production. Until next time, thanks for listening.